Situation is for Nortel pensioners?
We have a tentative agreement with the monitor, and Nortel will quit paying into the pension fund at the end of September. The pension fund currently is valued at 69%, and our benefits will cease at the end of 2010. So you have a group of LTD people who will lose funds. The pension, we're still working on the provincial government to try to get some movement there, because if you buy annuities for 17,000 people, it just doesn't happen quickly. Then you have a whole group of ex-Nortel employees who are let go without severance or layoff or benefits. So the situation is desperate. It's a cruel state to be in it at almost 61 years of age.
So there's almost 20,000 people facing uncertain futures then?
Yes, at the end of March it was 20,000. I expect it will be more by June.
What's the reason for the dysfunctionality? Is it simply Nortel going bust?
There were a number of, I guess from my perspective as an employee, poor choices made. First of all, they shifted their focus. We are a very, very customer-oriented business, and they shifted their focus from customer value to shareholder value. And of course that means that the executives of the companies get more wages because they're shareholders. Then they outsourced all their manufacturing to a lot of third world countries. And of course when you do that, you can no longer control the volume, the quantity, and the delivery time, or the quality. So that I see as a big downfall. And then once the manufacturing is sold off here in Canada, all they had left here is the R&D.
Why weren't the workers protected?
There were the pension fund was underfunded. There were contribution holidays granted them by the governments. So it was underfunded. It wasn't insured. And due to poor economic times, it's greatly decreased. It's 69%, the last actuary. They went into CCAA and it's just gone under.
What was it before Nortel?
There was Northern Electric, there was Northern Telecom, and then Nortel Networks, and then Nortel. I mean, we made Baby Champ radios, they made organs, lots of electrical stuff. The Belleville site has been there for more than 50 years, and I think it was the first site outside the province of Quebec, because Quebec was where it started. But
what kind of help are you looking for from government today, and what kind of solutions do you think are needed to prevent these kinds of problems in the future?
Well, first of all, we need change. We need a better pension fund nationally, so CPP needs to be increased and supplement, but better bankruptcy laws that put employees ahead of the junk bondholders that buy up the bonds at the last minute and pay pennies on the dollar for them. We need pension funds that are truly guaranteed and funded properly. They need to be funded at more than 100% because of economic downturns in the markets.
How do you feel about private pension plans versus public ones?
I think young people can't afford. They can't afford to invest RSPs or whatever. Young people starting out, I mean, you got people working at minimum wage, 2 kids, 2 jobs or 3 jobs. I just think they can't afford to do that. And my pension was my deferred wages, and now I'm not going to get it, or what I get is going to be greatly diminished.
What are you going to do?
As I said in my speech this morning, I now have, instead of recipes on my kitchen counter, I have job applications. I'm going to have to get a job.
The issue here today is that for people who do have pensions, promises are not being kept because of the rules that govern existing pension plans. And worse, some 1 in 3 Canadians do not have enough savings when they retire. Some 75% of those outside the civil service do not have any access to workplace pensions, so they're on their own with RSPs and so on, and most people cannot actually save enough for their own retirement.
Now, there's a process going on. The federal government is leading a policy discussion process around pension reform, pension changes. What do you think of the direction of that process?
Well, the details are out there. What is happening is that the federal government and the provincial governments don't seem to do anything more than talk. There has actually been no real legislation that will create a supplementary pension or do anything for people who do not have a workplace pension to save with. There have been some technical changes with regard to existing pension plans, but that's about it. And those little changes, including all the talking, are not going to change the current status quo for people facing retirement or people who are already retired.
Is there much of a push for more private pensions, more of a private pension system in Canada, or do you think the push will be for expanding the public system?
Well, certainly the private pension industry would like to keep the business, but as of this point, hardly any employer is creating a workplace pension, even a defined contribution plan, because of the administrative costs and the fiduciary responsibilities. So we won't be seeing too much improvement in the private pension landscape unless, of course, they convince the government to force people to contribute and to give the business to the private sector. Now, we wouldn't be recommending that because of the lack of fiduciary responsibility as well as the lack of governance by retirees.
And there must be a tremendous amount of anxiety among your own members. What are you hearing from them?
Well, interestingly, our members are by and large already retired. Their anxiety is for their children and grandchildren. And they see that the circumstances in which they had to try to save for their own retirement are completely changed for their children and grandchildren. And they realize that people will have to start saving right away, and they need a safe, reliable instrument to do that with.
Firstly, there's been more discussion about pensions in the last 12 months than in the last 12 years. And the discussions about the growing disparity with 65% of Canadians having no workplace pension plan. In the private sector, only 1 in 5 workers has a workplace pension plan, and the numbers are dropping. So we turn to governments and trade unions and other societal groups trying to force a discussion about, as a society, we need a stable retirement income system for all workers. It's been a good discussion. It's now meeting the stage of finance ministers meeting in the month of June in PEI, and the premiers all meeting in August in Winnipeg. And Canadians are looking to the federal government and all levels of government to contribute to this debate. At the pension breakfast CUPE's been holding across Canada, all 10 provinces this spring, when I asked the question, do you know anyone in your family or your neighborhood who doesn't have a workplace pension plan and is worried about retirement, all the hands shoot up. When I asked the question, do you know a senior, a woman over the age of 75, living on under $13,000 or $14,000 a year, all the hands shoot up. So there's a lot of Canadians without the voice of a trade union suffering in silence. They don't have a workplace pension plan, a senior literally living paycheck to paycheck, and the level of interest is extremely high, and the support for the CLC program of phasing in a doubling of the CPP benefit is getting more converts every day. This morning we heard from Bernard Dussault, former actuary for the Canada Pension Plan. Not only is it a viable proposal, it's a much needed proposal, one that should be acted on. We're not going to stop on this file. We'll be in Lakeside PEI at the Finance Minister's meeting. Last week we discussed at the Canadian Labour Congress, being in Manitoba the first week of August when the premiers meet. We're going to keep talking to CUPE members, meeting with chambers of commerce, doing media shows, meeting with politicians of all stripe. This is an issue that it'll take some time to fix, but we want to fix it for this generation and the next, and it's worth the effort.